And what CAI is doing, the Content Authenticity Initiative, is tackling a very specific area, which is addressing misinformation. Next slide, please, Paul. So we're witnessing, as we've talked about, extraordinary challenges to trust in media. Things like advances in AI, which is the whole point of this, responsible and irresponsible use of content and tools like AI, the velocity of content creation. I mean, thinking back to when people had a camera and a dark room to where we are now, where everybody is a content creator. Another challenge is the intent to deceive by bad actors. So you've got the examples like the deepfake video of Mark Zuckerberg, or the famous viral video of Nancy Pelosi, seemingly intoxicated. And the other challenge is the lack of transparency, trust, and attribution. So as the speed of digital content increases, there are powerful creation, editing, and distribution techniques that are more available to everyone and everywhere. You don't have to be a pro anymore. So for 40 years, the company I work for, Adobe, has developed leading tools to empower creators, and we're really proud of what we've done. And some of our key tools like Photoshop, include AI features like neurofilters. And these AI-powered tools enable creators to do what they do best and more efficiently, and remove the pain of having to do those tedious tasks. And the ability to use AI-powered tools to manipulate and edit content and to create content isn't inherently a bad thing. But what we're talking about here is also that these AI-powered tools and the creation of synthetic content may be deployed to create and spread disinformation and misinformation. So Adobe recognized these challenges. And in 2019, Adobe, along with the New York Times and Twitter, decided to tackle the problem head on by launching the Content Authenticity Initiative. Next slide, please. The Content Authenticity Initiative is a collection of major media and technology companies, NGOs, academics, and other organizations working together to establish an open industry around image and video authenticity and provenance. Getty Images is one of the members of CAI, along with the companies you see here: hardware companies, software companies, media companies, nonprofits like Witness. And it's important to note that CAI is a multi-stakeholder project, and we have over 700 members that are working together on this multi-year initiative. It's a cross-industry approach with a global reach. And the goal of CAI is to build trust in content by providing creators and content consumers with a simple and reliable method of determining the authenticity of content. And implementing this open industry standard will give creators a tool to claim authorship and empower content consumers to evaluate whether what they're seeing is trustworthy. And CAI is initially focusing on images, and then will extend to other content. So how does CAI do this? Next slide, please. So there are generally 3 ways to address misinformation: education, detection, and provenance. CAI is focused on a provenance solution. While CAI is undertaking efforts under education, we're focusing on provenance, since we see that the focus on detection may turn into an arms race as techniques for creating misleading content become more sophisticated and accessible. How does CAI propose to do this? With something called content credentials. This is robust, tamper-evident provenance data about how content was produced, edited, and published. And it's two-sided. For the creators, we want to make it simple to capture and publish provenance information. And for content consumers, we want to make it intuitive and expected for content consumers to view provenance information. Next, and you'll see on the right, this is an example of a live implementation in Photoshop. We launched this. It's a beta feature right now in Photoshop where anyone can go as Photoshop and add content credentials to their work, as you see here. You'll even see there's a tag for AI-enabled content. Next slide, please. CAI is still in the early stages. It was founded again in 2019, and we're actively working on it and growing our membership. What you're seeing here is the ultimate goal, not where we are today, but where we plan to be. So the ultimate goal is to create a digital chain of custody from capture to edit to publishing and sharing, including via social media. What we'd like to do at Capture is to have indelible CAI credentials, the content credentials, added to the metadata that accompany the content along its journey to publication. The goal is to partner with the manufacturers to integrate CAI capabilities into smartphones and cameras. For editing, the goal is to integrate CAI capabilities and editing tools like Photoshop and other companies. And for publishing, CAI's goal is to have publishing systems like the New York Times, BBC, and social media companies to maintain that CAI metadata throughout their platform, so that at each point in an image's journey, the content credentials will be checked to ascertain what, if anything, was done to change that image, and the content consumer can see that image provenance. There are some caveats with CAI in case Paul's going to raise his hand. So the CAI does not make judgments about the content of the image. So we won't label content as fake or inauthentic. Instead, what CAI does is allows creators to transparently share the details of how they created an image. This way, a content consumer can access context around who, what, and how the picture was changed, including if AI was used. And then that content consumer can view for themselves how authentic the image is. The other caveat, this is a product CAI and its implementation with the spec, is something that only good actors will use. Bad actors will not try and implement CAI. But this is why we need an entire ecosystem from the stage of creation, editing, publishing, sharing, and viewing that will use the open standard. So while CAI is driving many feature explorations and conversations around content authenticity, a critical part to bolstering trust in content is the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity. Next slide, please. So the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity, or the C2PA, is a formal coalition dedicated exclusively to drafting technical standards and specifications as a foundation for universal content provenance. The C2PA is a mutually governed standards development organization under the structure of the Linux Foundation's Joint Development Foundation. The C2PA complements the CAI efforts by providing documentation and end-to-end open technical standards for creators, editors, publishers, media platforms, and consumers. Anybody can use the C2PA spec. What's really amazing is the specification is the first of its kind and empowers content creators and editors worldwide to create tamper-evident media. Again, the content credentials. The C2PA's work is a result of this industry-wide collaboration focused on digital media transparency and will accelerate progress towards the global adoption of content provenance. This is a multi-year process, but earlier this year, we released the 1.0 spec, and that is incredibly fast, given how soon this came together. And that's due to this multi-industry effort to solve something incredibly important: digital content provenance and authenticity. And you can see some of our key members from some of the leading organizations. We've got Adobe, ARM, BBC, Getty Images, Intel, Microsoft, Sony just joined C2PA, Twitter, and nonprofits like Witness. And Adobe's already shown what CAI and C2PA can do in our products by using the open standard in several ways. Next slide, please.
Amanda, could I just add one
please.
additional thing about C2PA? And I think maybe interesting is that, one thing, and Getty Images has kind of been on the sidelines of this, watching some really incredible people work on the standard. And one important thing to note is that they're not trying to sort of recreate from scratch. They are incorporating, existing standards like IPTC. And so they're really trying to recognize that, there has been work done, in our industry and other industries before on standards, and, they want to be inclusive of those standards. And so if you are an IPTC lover that is watching this, you can be confident that that's going to, that the work that you've done there will continue with C2PA.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Kind of the main difference between content credentials and current metadata formats is that CAI technology uses cryptographic file signing. So it uses cryptographic asset hashing to provide this verifiable tamper-evident, signatures to show that the image and metadata hasn't been unknowingly altered. And it can be used to secure the common metadata like XMP and IPTC. So that's an excellent point. The other thing we want to note is we are using existing standards. And for those of you who don't know Adobe's history, we open source the PDF spec, We have a lot of experience with open source and how to have this work well and be available to the community. And so that's something that we brought when we helped create the C2PA, is our experience open sourcing the PDF spec.